Good morning and good afternoon. My name is Melinda Haring, and I'm the Deputy Director of the Eurasia Center at the Atlantic Council in Washington, D.C. We have a great program for you here today. We are so excited to bring you Olia Hercules, the new author of Summer Kitchens, a fantastic cookbook that just came out last week in the United States. She is a London-based chef, a Ukrainian chef, and she will be joined by Zhenya Gusovsky, who's the managing partner of my favorite restaurants in Kyiv, many wonderful restaurants. Welcome, Zhenya. Welcome, Olia. We're so happy to have you here today with us. So before we get started, I'd like to invite everyone to participate in this conversation. We're here on Zoom, we're here on Twitter. If you'd like to ask some questions, you can use the hashtag #EatUkraine. So please join in on that conversation. What we're going to do today is we're going to have a cooking demo with Olia and then a conversation about her new book. This program is sponsored in part by the Temerty Contemporary Ukraine program at Harvard. Thank you for being with us today. So before I get too excited about this cookbook and start asking our guests questions, I'd like to ask Roger if you could please take it away and bring up Olia's cooking demo. She's going to show us a new recipe.
Today we're going to make holubtsi. More commonly they're made with cabbage leaves, but actually this is one of my favorite recipes in summer kitchens. We went to this village called Kosmach in the Carpathian Mountains, and this beautiful Hutu woman called Hanna gave me an idea of this dish. She said that back in the day they used to use beetroot leaves a lot in the summer to make holubtsi. They would leave the leaves out in the sun to wilt a little bit so they're more pliable and easy to roll, and then they would cook it in a sauce. So today I've got a vegetarian version for you involving mushrooms, so my vegetarian husband can also eat it with me afterwards. Whenever you're cooking, do a little mise en place. It's done in restaurants for a reason. It's basically just cutting everything and separating it, and then you've just got everything ready, and then all you're doing is your cooking action, what I'm going to be doing now. Postscriptum. Actually the snails in the garden are also great fans of Eastern European cooking, I think, so they ate or put holes through most of my beetroot leaves. So I've got chard leaves instead today. They're very similar in taste, and actually the chard leaves are a little bit bigger and easier to work with, and they work a treat. Okay, so our ingredients. I've got some chard leaves from the garden that I steamed for about 2 minutes to make them more pliable and easy to roll. I've got some fresh tomatoes that I grated on the rough side of the grater like this. And in winter, when tomatoes are not great, I use tinned tomatoes. I've got some white onion sliced, and then I've got some British creme fraiche. In Ukraine, of course, we use smetana, but full-fat creme fraiche works really well instead. And then my husband made a parsnip and vegetable and remainder of our parmesan. We had some rind, so you please put them in as well. It tastes really nice and sweet, but you can just use normal vegetable stock. And then over here we've got finely diced onion, and this is for our filling. Mushrooms, chestnut, I grated on the rough side of the grater to make it faster, and then I had some fancy gnocchi mushrooms to use up too, and I just chopped them up. Then we've got the steamed chard stalks that I chopped up finely as well. Here's some brown rice. I'm using it today because we have loads of it left over. Sometimes I use buckwheat or barley. You can use any grain you like. Some sliced garlic, a little bit of butter, to cook with because I love it, but you can just use oil. And here I've got dill from my garden, which snails benevolently left alone. This is mammoth dill, and it's supposed to grow up to 6 feet tall. We shall see about that. Hopefully it will work. Okay, let's cook now. First, we're going to start with the filling. Butter in, and just a little splash of oil. If you ever make your own clarified butter, it's so good in this dish. Onion in, add a little bit of salt. I've got some more in here. just nice quality salt. What the salt does is that it draws moisture out of your onions, so there's kind of less chance that you're going to burn it, especially if you're a busy parent or something and you forget about your onions. May have happened to someone in this house. That's it, and just start cooking your onions, and I will show you what they have to be like before you add your mushrooms in. And they have softened and they got a little bit of color. Okay, just keep cooking, don't stir it. Medium high, and then I've just turned it down to medium low. Okay, that's it. I'm just going to take these out now, put them together with the onions. So we're going to go in. So it's so good. That's it, the garlic smells nice and mild. And this has cooked a little bit more as well, the chard. It's going to be nice and soft with the filling. Let's do the sauce now. So for the sauce, same pan, a bit of oil, our sliced onions, again put a bit of salt in, and then just cook it. It doesn't need to caramelize. They just need to soften. So I'm just going to use the lid, put the lid on, and then do a little bit of turning. This shouldn't take more than 5 minutes. Get a bigger bowl for your filling. I miscalculated a little bit. Just let it cool a little bit so the rice doesn't overcook. Once this is cooled, I'm gonna stir the rice through, taste it for seasoning, and let it cool down completely, and then we can fill the leaves. I'm rushing a bit today, I will be completely honest. My husband and my 6-month-old son have gone for a walk, and I just want to be able to finish this video before they come back. We're gonna put our what are they? Tomatoes in. Lower the heat. Put a little bit of stock in first. Just a bit. So I don't know. That must have been 100 mils or so. Just to loosen this situation up a bit. We're going to reduce it back down, and those sweet flavors will concentrate. Let me just taste it and see how this parsnip and parmesan rind stock is behaving. It's really good. Just gonna put a little bit of salt in. It's gonna be reduced, so I don't want to play around with salt too much. So, creme fraiche, this is 170 mils. So, put as much as you want or none at all. I am going to put half in and see how we get on. So, the amount of creme fraiche is equivalent to the amount of comfort that you're adding to this dish. Okay, so make sure you taste your filling. I mixed all of the mushrooms and onions and chard bits and rice together. I added a little bit of salt and some pepper, always a little bit more pepper actually, in this kind of thing. Give it a stir. Make sure that it's really nicely seasoned, and then I recommend laying your leaves out if you can, and then as they do in catering, and then just put piles of your filling in, and then do all of your rolling action. Okay, let's go. So I'm just going to demonstrate one slowly, and then I'm going to speed this up for you. Let's see if this is in focus and you can see it. Okay, yeah. So just like a little burrito. Up, then do the sides, and then just roll it. Just like this. Ukrainian plate on, put your sauce in, we'll think and go up back, chard, kale, red chard, my mammoth dill that's still a baby. I like quite a lot, so I'm just going to put some on. I think it looks rather beautiful. I do love my creme fraiche, smetana, so I would add just a little bit more here. I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you for watching.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that recipe with us, Olia. We'll definitely be featuring that recipe on social media as well. I liked that you picked a vegetarian recipe. So many of us think of Ukrainian food as heavy, potatoes, cabbage. So it's nice to see a vegetarian recipe. I also like that you didn't fuss, that you allowed, you dumped a little bit of creme fraiche and you weren't so precise about it. But I'm going to let Zhenya hop in. If you're just joining us, we have Olia Hercules from London, who's the author of Summer Kitchens, a new cookbook about Ukrainian food, and Zhenya Gusovsky, who's the managing partner of the Gusovsky Restaurant Group in Kyiv. Zhenya, any observations about her new modern riff on Holipsy?
Look, it's beautiful that Olia is using an ingredient that I think is highly undervalued currently, in Ukraine. I mean, chard. So we have so much beetroot growing, but it's not really being used at home. To me, it was always a surprise living in the US, for example, at Sancho, that somehow is treated as a plant that you have to remove and somehow kill off. That it's a hero in many US restaurants and is now becoming popular in Ukraine as well. So we have restaurants. We start off with Italian restaurants, and then we built the Georgian restaurant. These cuisines rely so heavily on the regional appreciation of ingredients and the regional differences. In Ukraine, with its beautiful, rich culture of so many nationalities that live here throughout history, can really shine in a global arena. And the work that Olia is doing is so incredibly important for us to actually bring this appreciation to our own homes, and then hopefully through the restaurants to show it to the outside world. So it's a sort of a beginning of a beautiful culture, I think, that we can build here.
Absolutely, absolutely. Olia, you write in the beautiful introduction in your new book that during the Soviet era, a handful of standardized Soviet dishes were introduced in cafeterias. And you say that the regional traditions and the Ukrainian language struggled to survive, but you see traditional recipes making a comeback. Could you give us some examples of great regional dishes from across Ukraine?
Well, yeah, of course. There's also in the book a whole essay on borscht that I've written. So I've done quite a bit of research on it, and it's so diverse. You know, of course, some ingredients repeat in all regions, and there's always some beetroot involved, sometimes tomatoes, you know, cabbage, etc. But it's actually its history and its regional diversity is great. So, for example, where I'm from in Tavria, you know, in Kherson, I don't even think it's the whole of Kherson. It's the really kind of local borscht that we have involves a giant dumpling. So you make a dumpling using a kefir dough and a little bit of soda, and then you poach it in borscht, and then you take it out and you slice it up like bread, and you make this paste we call lok. So you grind dill and garlic and put a little bit of hot borscht in it just to kill the garlic flavor a little bit, and then you pour it over the dumpling. Sometimes the dumpling is actually cooked inside the rooster, which is complete madness. But yeah, that happens as well. Then of course you go to Poltava and you've got the borscht with the incredible, you know, Christmas borscht that they do there. It involves smoked dry pears, which have traditionally been dried in a masonry oven called peach. And some restaurants in Kyiv have caught on to that and are using it, and it's just such a beautiful dish with that smokiness of the pear, etc. You go closer to Poland and you've got your borschts, which are very different. You know, my grandmother would not approve or recognize it because she'd say, you know, the borscht needs to be super thick, you know, so you put the spoon in and it sticks out, you know, it doesn't move because it's so thick, and it needs to be pink. Because actually locally we use beetroot that's almost like the Italian chioggia beetroot, you know, it's pink where I'm from. But closer to Poland you've got this Christmas borscht with these little dumplings called vushka, and it's almost like a consomme. It looks very elegant actually. It doesn't have vegetables in it. It's just a clear consomme with these beautiful, dainty little dumplings, and that's something gorgeous and different. And I think my grandma was wrong to to be so fervent about her local one. And also there are some borschts that are completely extinct. So, for example, I went to this tiny little village in Polisa region. You know, it's all kind of like forests and marshes around, and they go picking bilberries there and cranberries, etc. And the woman that I interviewed told me that they used to make borscht using elves, which are baby eels. So, you know, the eels have been overfished in that area, so they don't make it anymore, sadly. But that's something that existed in the past. Again, even my own grandmother used to cook borscht with some fried gobies. In Ukrainian, they're called bichki. There's so many different variations, and it's worth bringing back, you know. So it's good to see restaurants kind of catching on to that and realizing that it's something that many Ukrainians don't know about, you know. I grew up knowing just my grandmother's borscht, and I thought, oh, it must be pink, it cannot be red. And now I know, and I appreciate all of them. So yeah, there's I think there's a lot to kind of still discover, you know. My work is not done yet, I think.
Well, I'm counting on you to write. You promised to write an entire cookbook on borscht. So will that be your next one?
I would love to, yeah.
Zhenya, are you seeing this trend in Kyiv restaurants as well, where there's a rebirth of regional dishes? What's the scene like in Kyiv?
Look, I think that in Kyiv, we've had a couple of restaurants that appeared perhaps 5 years ago or so, some even earlier, that tried to show, you know, the rebirth of the kitchen, or to promote the rebirth of the kitchen. But even I recently went to Buckwheat, you know, a ski resort, and they have a restaurant called the Mushroom House, I believe. And it's the chef was educated in Spain, and him together with a restaurateur from Chernobyl are doing something completely new and different. And I was quite amazed with what I saw. And I think, again, probably in the next 6 or 7 years, given how agriculture is moving towards small farming and unique ingredients, we will see more and more restaurants appearing that will be more unique and more interesting. So less standardized, I would say. Because even now you go to Western Ukraine, again, on the same trip, we've had a bit of a complaint from one of the chefs who said, you know, we use ship's milk and the brinza cheese can be quite smelly.
Yeah.
And people oftentimes will say, can you, add some cow's milk? So it's a little bit less strong. But, then we have our traditional, let's say, cornmeal that we prepare with brinza cheese, and also some shkvark, with pork fat. So if you don't use strong cheese, the dish sort of loses its interesting appeal. It becomes sort of a soulless version of polenta that doesn't really need to exist. But then when you go back to, again, the regional, traditional, interesting ingredients, then you all of a sudden realize here's the reason why it even existed in the first place. Here's why it's unique or interesting. So again, much like Italian cuisine, in my opinion, this the attention to specific ingredients, to how they're produced, is what is now bringing back cuisine. And again, the simple example of using chard leaves. How important is it? I mean, who in their right mind at the restaurant now will use it? No one. Why? I don't think they have a good answer.
I was surprised, Zhenya and Olia, when I was in Ivana France, there's a young chef out there using beetroot when he's making linguine. It was just a sort of a shocking example to see purple noodles. I love this creative fusion that's really coming out of Ukraine and coming back to these ingredients. Olia, you write something very provocative in this book. You say Ukrainian food is one of the most exciting food cultures in Europe. What do you mean? That seems like a pretty bold claim.
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
I think it's completely justified.
Please.
Well, again, going back to the diversity of it, for a very long time, I've been living in the UK for 17 years, and before that I lived in Cyprus for 5. I left Ukraine when I was 13 years old. But for ages, people would just almost tell me like, oh, Ukrainian food is just about potatoes and overcooked cabbage. Or when I wrote my first cookbook, Mamushka, when I was writing it, people would ask, oh, you're writing a book about potatoes, ha ha ha. We do have amazing cabbage and potato dishes, and I totally embrace them. They're fantastic. And as Zhenya keeps pointing out, the quality of ingredients is so high. They come out fantastic, but there's so much more. And it's unfair and short-sighted to be not just talking about Ukrainian cuisine as a whole, but also, sometimes they just say, oh, Eastern European food. How can you say that? That's you can't say that, and Ukraine is huge. There's so many climate zones. There's diversity in ingredients. There's diversity in cultures. We went to a village in the Bessarabian region where it was set up by Bulgarians basically in the late kind of 18th century, and it's still there. One of the pictures that I witnessed and we have is this gorgeous woman is sitting in her summer kitchen, and she's using this really long rolling pin, and she sits at this very low table and with a really low kind of stool. I mean, it all looks very Turkish so far, yeah? And they speak Bulgarian, very archaic, old Bulgarian as well, creeps into the Russian and Ukrainian that she's speaking. And behind her is the blue and whitewashed summer kitchen wall with the rushnik, that her mother embroidered or something. So you can see this kind of like Ukrainian culture, and you've got the Bulgarian and the echoes of Ottoman Empire, etc. And that's just one little example. There's these kind of variations happening all over. So, it goes a lot. It goes, even though borscht, holubtsi, all of these, vareniki, everything, all of these dishes are fantastic. And again, super varied. There's stuff beyond that. But I still consider it as part of Ukrainian cuisine, because why not? Why, if we can talk about Italian regional cuisine or French regional cuisine, where you can get some German dishes by the borders or etc., why not talk about Ukraine in that way? And I think that's exciting, don't you?
Absolutely. Zhenya, do you agree? Is Ukrainian food one of the most exciting food cultures in Europe? You travel a lot. You're in Europe all the time.
Well, look, absolutely. I think it's just slightly underappreciated even locally. Again, particularly because we were, I think, as a culture, somewhat starved during the Soviet times in terms of, richness of ingredients. Standardization was overwhelming. So now when we get, mango or passion fruit, people get excited about it. But again, there is a little bit too much focus on putting these ingredients that are not local, that should not quite take up as much space in the chef's mind. Again, luckily that is changing, because every fashion, moves in and out, but your culture stays, that you're a part of it. And no, not that many years past, it's a few decades, but I think the young generation is more and more appreciative of the local culture. Even the Ukrainian language that you see, spoken in Kyiv, no one is forcing it on the local population. Russian is still widely used. I speak Russian. My brother speaks Ukrainian more often than not. But the Ukrainian culture, Ukrainian love for our own country is growing from within. These things cannot be forced on anyone, but they can certainly grow in a beautiful way that they are.
Yeah.
But also, speaking of using beetroot, I have some breaking rights, because in Pantagruel we had the beetroot pasta with the local goat cheese. That was our Italian chef's idea of appreciating Ukrainian ingredients at an Italian restaurant, which of course is named after Pantagruel, a French book hero. So we were already we're a little bit risque in the way we named the restaurant. But
so you're predicting Ukrainian food is going to be part of a pan fusionism.
Look, I mean, fusion has almost become a dirty word, but to me, and I lived in San Francisco for quite a few years. And I've met Alice Waters on a number of occasions. Again, the idea is very simple: grow things locally, go to your farmer, taste the food that grows there, because God willing, your richness will come from within. And then you can build restaurants that are popular now, even in Europe and the United States, where all the food is cooked from ingredients that are grown within, 200 miles of where you are. We are on our way.
It's exciting to see. Olia, can I ask you to explain what the heck is a summer kitchen? And why did you write an entire cookbook about it? We don't have summer kitchens in the US. So I really encourage you to get a copy of this. She has gorgeous photos. It's not the most, these kitchens are very modest. So why did you write an entire cookbook about this?
So basically about 6 years ago, just after I wrote Mamushka, I was talking to someone, maybe my publisher even, and I just very casually just mentioned, oh yeah, and now a summer kitchen, and then I was like, wait, hold on, what the hell does summer kitchen mean? And to all of our listeners who don't know, perhaps, well, they are kind of little outhouses that serve a sole purpose of being a kitchen. Back in the day, it was really hot. People couldn't, didn't have air cons, etc. So it would be used almost like a kitchen workshop. You'd cook your daily meals there, and you would also use it as a space where you would, pickle, etc., preserve food for winter. And well, to me, I still kind of over romanticize them a little bit, because to me they're the stuff of childhood. Yeah, all of my memories are connected to this beautiful. It was, as you said, it wasn't glamorous. It was just like a little brick building. But to me, the memories are beautiful. So I explained it, and as I explained it, I thought, oh my God, this is such a unique and interesting tradition. And, I grew up with one, but I don't really know why they existed and whatever. And I just kind of got interested in it. And I started researching them, thinking maybe I can write an article for The Guardian or something, it'll be a short article. And then as I found out more, I thought and found out that they don't just exist in the south of Ukraine, they are everywhere. And they even have different regional names, etc. And I just thought, oh, what an interesting way to look at Ukrainian regional cuisine, but through this unifying thing, this window prism of a summer kitchen. So that's how the idea came. And luckily, I went with the idea to Bloomsbury, my publisher, and they said, "Oh wow, yeah, it sounds amazing. Why don't we do it?" So yeah, and it was, and also they are disappearing a bit. In my town, Kakhovka, I went to visit a few, and they're either they're turning them into warehouses or destroying them, or turning them into dog kennels or whatever. And to me, it's sad. Like I love the idea of, for example, my aunt Luda, and I always say, oh, they have huge vegetable patches. It's not a vegetable patch; it's a small holding, and people grow their own amazing produce. And she had 30 kilos, of a glut, for example, of these amazing organic, obviously, aubergines, and it's such a treasure. And I'm not sure she appreciates it, but I'm not sure if younger generations are, en masse. It's really good actually to hear Zhenya that he's saying that smaller farms are being set up and people are kind of turning to it and actually realizing how rich we are in that respect, with traditions, having that land, having that incredible soil that we have, and the weather, the sun, etc. And it is becoming extremely important, even in higher cuisines, in restaurants in London here. It's all about organic produce, how much energy and love people have put into growing produce. That's like extremely important. And so we have this incredible thing. And just to go back very briefly to the previous thing that we were talking about, there's people like Magnus Nielsen, the head chef of Faviken, which he's closed recently, the Swedish chef. And he asked me, he said, Olia, I would love to travel around Ukraine, like, is it possible? Can we set it up and whatever? And then obviously the lockdown happened and it's not happening. But there is interest in our culture. Noma is going to Georgia. I don't see why Ukraine can't be next.
Absolutely.
If Zhenya and the others keep doing their good work, and I keep trumpeting from this end, I think we can get somewhere.
There we go. I love it. I love it. Tell me a little bit more. You wrote some really beautiful things about summer kitchens. You said that they encourage a very intimate, almost spiritual connection to everything living around you. What do you mean that summer kitchens are a place of hard labor and a sanctuary?
So hard labor, as in, remembering my mom, who perhaps doesn't do it anymore, but my auntie still does. As I say, what the hell are you going to do with the 30 kilos of aubergines? You're going to blanch them, you're going to weigh them down, you're going to, ferment them, whatever. And then you've got your peppers, you've got your tomatoes, you've got etc. 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 Everything gets bottled and canned essentially and put there for winter. And it's almost like a semi-industrial operation. All these jars come out and people really put a lot of graft into it. And they live seasonally, etc. Maybe things, of course, are changing, but largely in rural areas, people still do it. So yes, and in terms of sanctuary, I don't know. Maybe I was projecting a little bit of me into it. Like, to me, it's something that has a really warm feeling. And actually, it's not just me. I've got 7 essays at the back of the book. What I did basically a couple of years ago, when I was writing the book, I sent an appeal up on Instagram. I said, people, if you know what a summer kitchen is, please DM me and I will send you some interview questions. It was a way for me to do research. And a lot of people, like 100 emails came in eventually. I sent them interview questions. They sent me answers back. And then as I was kind of reading through them, I was like, oh my God, this is some amazing writing and amazing memories. So what I did, I got rid of the questions and I showed them to my publisher and I was like, look, if we do a very gentle edit on this, like love letters to summer kitchens, to people's childhoods, to their grandparents, because a lot of them went to stay with their grandparents in the village, whatever, and they had a summer kitchen there. And they still make me cry. Like they were the first things that I read when I received the book. I was like, I'm gonna reread these because they're so beautiful, So yeah, definitely there's loads of hard work there, and also a lot of warmth and a lot of kind of like family. I don't know, family events and beautiful things happened there.
Do you have one in London now?
No, my husband, who's a photographer, has a shed that he uses as his office. So my plan is when the kids are older and they go off to university or whatever they want to do, when we kick them out, basically, I'm going to move my husband's office back into the house, and then I'm going to turn it into a little summer kitchen. I don't know. I'm also growing some veg there, so like my chard and stuff. So we'll see. There's hoping.
Okay, great. I love that. So we're getting some great questions. Lada wants to know, the chard and kale calypsi look delectable. In the areas where grapevines grow, how are the leaves used?
Yeah, especially kind of by Moldovan border, they make a really, there's fantastic wine there as well, and they use vine leaves in that way, so in a very similar way like you would with what I did there. Um, Let me think. Bulgarian populations might also, you can wrap cheese into it. So like some brinza or whatever, you wrap it in wine leaves, and then you grill it together in this vine leaf, and then the flavors kind of marry together. Like put some chili and some citrus on it or something. It's delicious.
Zhenya, have you seen any examples?
Yeah, I mean, the grape leaves I've seen used more often, actually, chard leaves. Again, I'm
Yeah.
repeating myself at this point, but I think this is most Ukrainians will know dolma, so for them it won't be anything surprising.
Sure.
But again, cabbage leaves the most popular, but I think many meaty leaves can and should be used.
Sure.
Many of them are quite edible and very nice.
Okay, a comment. This is just a lovely comment. Betsy says, I just want to say I totally agree that there's something special about produce from Ukraine. Even organic stuff in the United States doesn't taste the same. I learned to love cooking and food in Ukraine.
Oh, that's so nice.
It's lovely. Okay, here's a question from the audience. Have you, either of you, and Olia, please go first, have you seen any interesting Ukrainian food ventures, restaurants, chefs, books in other parts of the world? How are they representing Ukrainian cuisine?
So restaurant wise, unfortunately there hasn't been much great stuff happening in London, but there was a really exciting pop-up in Soho called Pampushki, and it's an Odessan. So the owner, the person who set it up, is from Odessa, and his wife is English, and the wife's brother was the chef. So an English guy went to Ukraine. They went all over Ukraine. He learned from the Ukrainian relatives, whatever. They came back and set up this lovely little pop up in London, Soho, and it was really delicious. His borscht was, legit. Like it tasted really good. So it was great actually to see even a little bit of something appearing. I'm not sure obviously about the US. I'm sure there's loads of things happening there now. I hope so at least. No, no.
Unfortunately not. No, we had a Georgian restaurant in the DC area, and it went under, and there's a new one now, but I don't think there's a Ukrainian restaurant. Zhenya, tell us what you're seeing, please.
Look, I mean, I was approached by a gentleman from India, actually, who wanted to open a Ukrainian restaurant in Shanghai. So I have no idea what his reasons were, but that is the only explicit show of interest. But I think that globally we see, and again, I'm of Jewish descent as well, but you see a lot of Ashkenazi Jewish dishes being prepared all over the world. So no one will call it a Ukrainian restaurant, but at least to me, it's a part of also Ukrainian cuisine. Because I mean, you ask an average Ukrainian, they will know what forshmak is. It is a Jewish dish, though. Yeah. But again, Jews living in Ukraine, to me, it's a part of Ukrainian culture. To me, I am a part of Ukraine, despite that I'm of Jewish descent, but also I am a Ukrainian. And the richness of culture, I mean, we have to appreciate that there's no divide. But it is easier to open an Israeli restaurant and not call it a Ukrainian restaurant, But I think a part of it is we have to talk about ourselves. People will not in any way guess that Ukraine needs to be promoted all over the world. Ukrainians have to do it themselves. Georgians have done a very good job, and that's why I believe there's more Georgian restaurants. And I think the more work we do, the more good work we do, the better representation of our cuisine will be all over the world.
Absolutely. Another question for both of you, and Zhenya, why don't you start? What can the government do to help export Ukrainian food and cuisine?
Actually, we are doing something in that regard. I don't think that we're starting it because we want to export our cuisine. We're starting it because we want to gain access to more ingredients in our restaurants. It is still very difficult for farmers to undergo certification process for various ingredients. It's a somewhat corrupt and a kind of a hefty process that favors larger producers. So the easier it is for us to buy from small farmers, the easier it will be for them to specialize in certain niche or ingredients that are currently niche ingredients, but can become, more mass-produced or more popular. And once that happens, I think we will start talking about ourselves and trying to open Ukrainian restaurants elsewhere. Because of course, let's say as food lovers, I personally don't really care whether I have a Ukrainian restaurant elsewhere in the world, because I will be paranoid about the quality of the food in a place where I'm not living, because we still are in our restaurants every single day. But as a Ukrainian, I would certainly love for the world to see our culture, because that will also mean that people will know better who I am. And, we all want to be let's say, known for all the good and interesting things that we have to say about ourselves, hopefully. So the government, if it has to ease the certification process, it has to promote small and medium enterprise. Access to sort of cheap loans will be very helpful, and they're sort of doing it at this point. Making the laws to buy the land a little bit easier will work wonders as well for small farming. All of these things happen all over the world at different times, and it takes a few people and a good effort, to promote SME, small medium enterprises from the government, and then things happen on their own. Free markets do work,
Olia, any thoughts on this question?
So I'm not as clued in to what the Ukrainian government is doing, sadly, or how easy or hard, probably pretty hard, to import Ukrainian products into the UK. But I know what we're lacking here, and which will do really well. Sour cherries, impossible to find in the UK. Vyshnya, nothing. I cannot find it. I can't find them frozen. I can't find them fresh. It's just. It's ridiculous. And another thing that people, in my experience, really love is the Ukrainian, toasted unrefined sunflower oil. Really beautiful stuff. Whenever I use it during my pop-ups or when I'm cooking, whatever, like, people go crazy for that. You put it over some like fermented tomatoes or something, it's like, oh my god, taste explosion for people. So those two kind of iconic Ukrainian products, if Zhenya knows anyone who can finally at some point import it into the UK, you'd make me the happiest woman.
Okay, get on that, Zhenya. We do have good smetana, and I was going to ask you, what do you do? This is very good smetana. What do you do if I'm using this cookbook in the U.S. and I don't have access to the ingredients you call for? What beyond, you said with smetana you could use cream fraiche. What else could you use if I can't find the right ingredient? If I can't find sunflower oil?
Well, I think really you can't find it. In terms of sour cream, like anything, sour cream,
Just sour cream, okay.
Just like basically what matters is really good quality. So it can be, it can be a very American equivalent of, but if it's like from a nice organic farm that's not putting any rubbish into it, and if it's not watered down, like people buy full fat. Like, okay. If you don't buy full fat, like all of the other stuff is just air and water, don't do it. So just like a really nice American equivalent of the Ukrainian stuff. If you can't find toasted sunflower oil and you really want to add a little bit of that, a really nice toasted, like a sesame oil, will also work quite nicely, I think. It's all, cooking in general is all also about adapting. You don't have to be obviously for some cuisines like Southeast Asians, whatever cuisines or whatever, you can't make a certain dish without lemongrass, etc. But for something like Ukrainian food, you can find and adapt. You can find different local but very similar ingredients. Like today, as Zhenya has mentioned a couple of times, chard is not really used in Ukraine. Like beetroot leaves, yes, have been used in the past. Chard, no. But my chard is doing really well, so why shouldn't I use it?
Awesome, awesome. Natalia Wright says you've been talking a lot about greens. Do you have any ideas for using sorrel besides soup? I love the soup, but I'm looking to branch out.
The green borscht that uses sorrel. They are actually in the UK. They use sorrel just as a salad leaf. It's really beautiful. Zhenya, have you got any ideas? Have the Ukrainians in Kyiv been using sorrel in any different ways?
Not really. I mean, mostly it's the borscht, the soup.
Yeah.
Some will use it as a salad because you can replace lemon for acidity. Here you just have your natural sort of acidity that comes from it. It's a little bit different. Can be fun.
Actually, it's, what I do use it in, which is not traditional, but it does work really well. And it is another soup, admittedly, but it works really well in your kind of fish broth. So if you make a really nice broth using bones or heads or whatever, and don't cook it in the soup, just kind of slice it really thinly, put it in the bottom of your bowl, and then pour your hot fish broth in it. So it cooks just in the bowl. You're not overcooking it too much. It like retains more freshness, and it's really good. I highly recommend it. I've been using
Wonderful.
it.
Wonderful. Susan Cooper wants to know about food in Bukovina in Chernivtsi Oblast. Could you say anything about that? Do you have any recipes in your book?
I haven't been. No, unfortunately, the trip. So we did do about 10,000 kilometers all over Ukraine, but sadly, number one, the finances were quite limited, so I couldn't do the whole of Ukraine. And the second reason is that I have an 8-year-old son that I couldn't take out of school, so I had to do these crazy bursts trips. Like we did 5 mental trips where we're just like, hopping from one village to another. If it wasn't for my son I would have probably moved to Ukraine for 6 months and would have done a more kind of, a slower journey and a little bit less crazy. But there's a whole life ahead, so I might still do that, hopefully.
Oh, okay, we'll put it on your list. A wonderful question from my colleague Lillian Biving. She wants to know, as Ukraine modernizes, young people are finding less time to devote to canning, preserving, making vareniki, and even borscht, and find grocery stores more convenient to the pace of their lives and eating out. How can we preserve these traditions you talk about in your book and inspire young people to learn their grandmother and grandfather's traditions? What more can be done to ensure these traditions continue?
I mean, I don't know about America, but here all of the fermentation stuff is really trendy. I mean, that's probably why my books are doing so well, because to here it's a hipster thing, but actually, it's part of my tradition of Ukrainian tradition. So just for people to kind of maybe reconnect with that, just give them an idea that something traditional also can be something pretty cool. And also, as we have all found out, really good for your health. We had no idea in the 80s that all of the fermented stuff is good for you. My mom would say, oh, don't eat too many, apologies, someone at the door. She'd say, don't eat too many ohirki, there's salt in it, because salt was the enemy at the time. And but now we know that all the fermented stuff actually was really good for you. So, make these connections and promote and kind of reconnect with it that way, I think. Apologies about the noise.
No problem at all. No problem at all. Jackie asked if we'll post the recipe for Olia's holipsy, and we'll absolutely do that. So just check our Twitter feed. You can check Olia's Twitter feed as well. And I'm being told that there are Ukrainian restaurants in Chicago and New York City. They've been around for a long time. But it would be wonderful to see something new and inventive. I wanted to ask you, could you tell us a little bit more about one recipe you love? I'm a sweet person, and a couple of your sweet recipes really stood out to me. You have a recipe for babka, and I usually think chocolate, but you did poppy seed babka, which I thought was really creative.
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
So I've got a really amazing friend called Katria Kaluzha. She lives in my town, Kakhovka, but weirdly we kind of hooked up via Instagram. she found me actually. She has a micro sourdough bakery. She just bakes from her home for people in my town. And she's amazing. And she's got this really deep knowledge about local cuisine, whatever. So actually this poppy seed babka that she calls the Vivanets is her invention. And she made it for me in her summer kitchen. I was just like, oh my God, please may I have this recipe? And it's just incredible. You know, the poppy seed paste is used in Ukraine, you know, in so many dishes. And this is just like a nice kind of like slightly modernized version of it. So yeah, it's really good. Do I have time to mention one more sweet?
Please, absolutely.
There is
other recipes that stick out, your favorites. Tell us.
In Transcarpathia, where I spent some time in, so it kind of like the village that I went to was equidistant from Slovakia, Romania, and Hungary by 30 kilometers. You know, and you can see the influences in language and also in food. And this, look, I have it bookmarked. And there's these hombovci that are absolutely delicious. So you make this yeasted dough, very light, you know, the dough is quite wet, so they come out feather light, so light. And then you fill them with seasonal berries, basically. When I was there, bilberries were in season, and that's what they stuffed them with. And then you steam them. And then what they do is then they toss it in melted butter, and then they toast some nuts and bash them with sugar. And then you have these steamed buns filled with these amazing berries. You toss it in butter. I use brown butter, which is a bit chefy, but it works so well. And then you toss it on all of this like sugared walnuts. I use pecans here in the UK because I love them. And it's just, you know, like the satisfaction that a really good bao gives you. Like it's the same kind of like really light, delicious texture. I'm like salivating. I love those so much. I think they are wonderful. So yeah, that was a new recipe for me. Like we don't make them in the South, so it was a really interesting one. And I make them all the time now because my oldest son loves them.
That's wonderful. So you're finding new recipes from other parts of Ukraine as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So Chris Wilson wants to tell you that Austin, Texas had a Ukrainian restaurant called Brahma, but it closed after a few years. And she says that it's pretty easy to get Ukrainian food products in the US. Oksana has said, absolutely delightful interview. Thank you. I'm writing from Miami. Another person named Maro wants to say, as a chef and gardener with Armenian heritage, I have used stuffed bulgur with the Swiss chard leaves, dolma, and other flavorings. Have you used that in place of rice?
Delicious. And they use a lot of bulgur in the Bessarabian area of Ukraine, actually, yeah.
Julia wants to know if there are any other interesting uses of buckwheat.
So you know the hopes that just made are good with it's good with buckwheat. What else? I mean, it's like a quite an old school thing to stuff it. I don't know. There are loads of vegetarians here. Suckling pig stuffed with buckwheat is extremely good. Just trying to think. I mean, to be honest with you, in Ukraine, it is used quite simply. Like, well, at least when I was growing, and I don't know if it is a Soviet thing. You know, in the past, you see loads of recipes where buckwheat flour is used, and you know the groats are used in varieties of ways. But sadly, like the ubiquitous way of using it is, you know, your buckwheat kasha, maybe some chicken livers and some crispy onions on top. You know, something like this. But Zhenya maybe knows more, which I would love to hear, by the way.
I think that blood sausage is quite frequently stuffed with buckwheat. I've seen kotlety made with buckwheat. We actually use crispy buckwheat popcorn for some of our dishes, so you can use it sort of as a breading of sorts. But yeah, I think I agree with you that it's generally used as a simple ingredient, and buckwheat flour is quite frequently used now. With the, you know, we have a healthy food craze in Ukraine as well, so buckwheat is more and more popular.
I've got a recipe for buckwheat pikelets in the book. Pikelets are kind of like crumpets, so almost like you know, I don't know. Do you have that word in America? They're like little pancakes basically, but you use your sourdough discard. And they're really, really delicious used with buckwheat flour, and also used as a batter to fry cauliflower in. So your egg, milk, a little bit of buckwheat flour, you put your vegetable in, like steamed cauliflower or something, and then you fry it, and it's really tasty.
Wonderful. Well, it is summer. It's very hot here in the United States. Can you give us one more idea for something to make this summer, even if we don't have a summer kitchen?
Zhenya, can we start with you, and I'll have a quick think about something refreshing. Do you have any ideas? Let me flick
Look,
through.
honestly, we usually go to, we have some picnics with the family, and then it's all open fire, some nice vegetables that you can burn over fire, make some meats and marinade. Again, that's international largely, of course, but as long as far as summer is concerned, this is our favorite.
I've got it. So another dish that my friend Katya made me was very simple. So you slice zucchini, your courgettes, you grill them or fry them or whatever, and then she made. So I mentioned this technique called lyok, where I come from, or it's called salamur in Bessarabia. You basically grab some garlic, then she used some dill and actually some thyme. But I use marjoram as well because I've got a really aggressive bush in my garden. Then you bash it all together, add some really nice vinegar. I think we used mulberry vinegar or something like that. And then some salt, obviously. And then you just, whilst the courgettes are still warm, you pour it all over so they suck, they soak in all of that beautiful flavor, and put a little bit more marjoram or whatever herb you like on top, and Bob's your uncle. It's really good.
That sounds perfect. And tell us what you were drinking. That's the last thing you have to tease us with. I think you had a rhubarb drink.
Oh yes, it's not very Ukrainian actually.
Okay, I thought it was.
No, it's water kefir, but I've second fermented it with strawberry, rhubarb, and blueberries. It was quite delicious. Yes, but of course in Ukraine we do compote, which you just grab whatever fruit you've got in your garden, in your orchard, whatever. You put it in some water, you boil it, then you chill it, and there you go. It's really refreshing.
Olia, there's one last greeting from Argentina. So I think this has been a wonderful conversation. We really, really enjoyed it. Thank you so much. Everyone go out and get a copy of Summer Kitchen, study it, send her questions. She's very active on social media. Zhenya Gusovsky, thank you so much for joining us. Look forward to seeing you in Kyiv. Look forward to meeting you in London. And thank you for joining us.
It was such a pleasure. Lovely to meet Zhenya as well. And thank you for being such a great moderator. And thank you everyone for joining as well. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Olia. Thank you, Zhenya.